which I usually frustrate somehow, either by kicking back myself or by moving out of the way. I think next time he kicks, I will try some simple judo, waiting until the last second and moving my leg slightly so that his kick connects with nothing, and watch him struggle with his balance.
That is a very interesting one. Oh, Charles is here. Good. There you go. Hi, Charles and Osuma and Ivan. Hi, guys. Okay, so we're starting on a dream here of Tim's. Okay, so so you're a prisoner at a labor camp, and you are on an exercise with the rest of the prisoners. Is that right?
Okay. I'm not sure what the context is, but my little group is performing some kind of it's either a song or a play or a diversion of some kind.
Okay.
But they're musical instruments, is that right? They're musical instruments. It's musical instruments?
Yeah. So I've got a guitar and I'm playing this this particular chord. I remember it being a C chord that is open. And interestingly enough, now that I think about it, I have in my own head that I'm using a different bass note than the C. It might be a fifth or something like that.
But there's a chord that sounds that is kind of a signal for something, or like
I'm not sure what quality it has, except that it feels like an open chord, as if I was almost playing with no hand on the guitar. And it's particularly frustrating to this one guy who is my nemesis, this guard.
Yeah.
Well,
and so I'm sure the guard.
Is he in the other group? Is he in the other group, or is he a guard?
He's a guard, but he's in the other group. Yeah. So it's so my group seems to be other prisoners, and his group may be other prisoners with this one guard. But I'm sure that this guy
trustee or something.
Yeah,
you know,
something.
like what they call a trustee. You know, he's a prisoner, a guard among prisoners. He's a prisoner, guard prisoner, or whatever. But yeah, I don't.
Sure.
Well, you know,
sure.
Typically when you have a dream about prisoners or someone who's held captive, the ones at least that I've had, have to do with that you're somehow under a some kind of a compulsion. Now, there's some unconsciousness involved. That my dream was that there was a bunch of prisoners held in the basement, and if I would just say, "You are real," they'd be released. So I think being a prisoner means a prisoner of who? If you are being held captive, who is holding you captive? It would be some superior judging entity. Okay, so typically that is something to do with and here's the other thing is what in alchemy, what's held prisoner, the spirit is held captive in matter and needs to be redeemed, you know. So it is something that's in need of liberation, you know. Okay, so there is an aspect of us that needs liberation, and it has a group quality. So it's in opposition. The guard is going to be typically the shadow or some aspect of yourself that is the one in opposition, you know, to the conscious attitude. My analyst always used to say. So in other words, that the dream ego is held captive along with other entities that are that would be some aspect that needs liberation. And so there's an aspect of ourselves that needs freeing or release because it's under some kind of, you know, it's caught in a dead end, or it's caught in some type of a situation of where it requires redemption, requires freeing. Okay, and then the shadow is in opposition, or seems to be one who's trying to keep you captive or something. And you know, you're on the curving sidewalk. Okay, was the curve going counterclockwise or clockwise?
It's an S curve.
An S curve. Okay.
And
So
this seems to be just one section of it. So in the distance, it's just curving like this.
Yeah. So it's the snake path, you know, it's not the straight path. So it is on a snake path, which would tend to be a path of nature. The group that needs liberation is displaying its lyric qualities. I mean, it is you know, it's being it is at least being lyrical, even though it's held captive, and it's following a nature path, and the shadow is in opposition to it. So you know, when there is a sense of being trapped like this and no way out, and you're held captive, this also tends to be a signal that the ego can't help you now. You know, in other words, the dream is saying the only way that the lyrical can be freed or liberated is not through the ego. It has to happen along the snake path or the nature path. So I mean, in a fairy tale, this would be that the only thing that can lift the curse or cure the enchantment is animal helpers, or some type of a nature help, or some supernatural help, which would either come from the feminine or it would come from nature. But it definitely would not come from the conscious attitude. The shadow represents the conscious attitude as well, I think, because it's trying to keep you captive. So the ego can't release you, and there's the conscious attitude is also holding you prisoner. So now you're saying you can't make any sense of it.
Yeah, but the thing that really flummoxes me about this is the emotional attitude. Because in the dream, even though I'm the prisoner, I am the person who is in charge. I feel like I'm in control of this thing. And my nemesis, the guard, is just an idiot. And so this is where my interpretation just falls apart, because why in the world would I be held prisoner if I have such capacity and the other guy is an idiot?
Yeah, well, that again has something to do with I mean, I'm just speculating. Anybody else jump in? Is that I'm speculating, and just based on my own dreams, is that it has to, even though that there is a sense of there is some control by the dream ego, it really is not is not adequate to escape this attitude of something being held captive. And also you can't escape the nemesis. So the dream ego, even though, I mean, in my dream, all these figures are held captive in the basement by an old crone. And the only way that they can be released is if I admit that they exist and they're real, you know. So that's how they're liberated. And how they're liberated is these are figures in the unconscious. They're in the depths. This happens up above the earth, so it's not exactly the same. But
Well,
go ahead. Did you want to say something, Gary?
yeah, and of course, you know, so much of this just depends on what resonates with you. But so you're held prisoner, but you are in control. So you know that you have these diametrically kind of opposed things, and I'm wondering if it's that, like, if let's say that you're aligned with a particular idea or particular, you know, archetype, that you're constellating like a particular attitude, and that's what's holding you prisoner. Okay, then the shadow, in that case, you know, you play this note, and the shadow is like almost like trying to awaken you to, like, become awake. You know, this is, you know, trying to, like, maybe let you see this is a situation, and that if you can only see it, then you can step outside of it. So it could be that your shadow is the thing that's the help here, because the shadow, you know, also includes the creative aspect. And so the creative aspect is almost like attacking the ego to try to bring about the change.
You're your own warden too. I mean, it
Yeah.
reminds me of where you know, you're held prisoner for 20 years, and you happen to lean against the prison door one day, it's open. It's been open all the time. So I mean, you just didn't know it. So I think to a certain extent, the prison, you're both a prisoner and the warden at the same time. You know. Oh wait, Sandy's here.
Can I just add something?
Yeah,
go ahead. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah.
Hey,
this
Sandy.
reminds me a bit. This reminds me a bit of. It's an animation movie called Kubo and the Two Strings.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have seen that one. And this is basically a little guy, and for him to fight the demonic feminine, he has to play the string. And when he plays the string, he literally kills the demonic feminine. My question for you, Tim, like your instrument, like what part of it did it deal with your sort of able to fight the antagonist figure of the other group?
What part of the instrument?
Yeah, you were playing instrument. Can you tell more about what you did to that instrument and what effect it had on the different aspect of the dream figure?
Seems to be the freeing thing.
Well,
the instrument of liberation, yeah.
Of course, I think of the instrument as being my creative power, and I feel pretty confident on playing the guitar, and so here I am with something that is easy and and has a certain effect. And the thing I associate with the C chord is the people's key.
Mm.
You know, it's the easy key.
Mm.
And for some reason, this just irritates my shadow.
Mm.
Because it is the instrument of liberation. The music is what can cure the sense of captiveness. It appears to
Mm.
be the freeing thing, you know,
So
or the
is
key
is
to
it
unlock the jail.
so is it correct to say if the instrument is sort of a symbol of the logos of
Or how about eros? What would it could it be the symbol of eros?
Yeah.
I mean, in other words, it's the since it's nonverbal. Say, you know, there logos has to do with the word, and
word?
here
Yeah.
this music is a this
Mm.
non-verbal energy,
Mm.
always
So that
healing. When is it not healing? So so these people who are held captive, the one thing that they do together, even though that they're held captive, is to play the instruments of eros, you know, the
yeah.
instruments of the of
Ah.
the bringing together. So, and it's the liberating thing, and the shadow is knowing that that's the key to release, so it is trying to thwart it.
Mm.
So what this makes me think of is if the roles were reversed, it would make much more sense to me. If the character that I appear as in the dream is the shadow, and the nemesis is my ego,
Mm-hmm.
it would make a lot more sense to me because I would have this certain control and power and using the creative and being able to thwart the um, the kind of destructive behavior of my nemesis. That makes better sense. But turning it around and having me be the ego, all of a sudden, it just is confusing to me because in my waking life, I'm very much an artist, and the eros is everywhere in my life. And I'm doing creative work all day long. And the part that I have trouble with is in interfacing with the logos world, the reasonable world.
Well, the shadow would probably be the logos world, you know. I mean, so even in, you know, when you're in the world of of being held captive, you know, this is the world of logos. I mean, the eros would not hold you prisoner. Logos would, because it's the more of the sense of of perfection and righteousness is rigid. Okay, where eros is more compassionate and fluid. Okay, so the music is the fluidity that is coming into the rigidness, and the logos is trying to thwart fluidity on the snake path, the S path, from coming into the equation. Because once the fluidity flows into the rigidness, there it's the rigidity is going to be dissolved. Now, you might say that you don't feel that you're a rigid person. Just a second here, another person. But there must be some aspect of you that has a rich. Hello, hi. We're just started here, so join Gelsey. Yeah, hi Gelsey. It's just we just started here. So
Well,
anyway,
that
let
makes
me.
sense to me that there'd be some kind of hidden rigidity that I'm not aware of. Yeah.
Yes, there's some aspect of you that is frozen in some type of a formulaic um, some aspect of that is inhibiting the free flow, the fluidity. There is a aspect of you that's static and is holding things. So the liberating path is the snake path. The way to make fluid the rigidity is the music, and it's centered around C, which is the center. That is the that would be the note of the self, because all the notes surround C. The forces of the rigidity, which would be the shadow, is supporting the rigidity, is in opposition. So that's what I would say, is that this is a dream about the lack of fluidity, or the lack of there's an aspect of you that is too committed to I'm just trying to think in my own life. If it would be some like say there was an aspect of me that I overvalued, but was not conducive to, was separating me from participating in the dialogue with the inner world. So I mean the inner world is nature, is the voice, the informing wisdom of nature. I'm separated from that by some conscious attitude I have, represented by the shadow, and the only way of liberation is through the liberating eros of the lyrical along the snake path. And the warden of the prison is myself. So
Yeah.
I don't know. That is a is what I like about dreams like that is the sense of the dreams that I really get a lot out of is the ones where there's no way out, where you are in a trap you can't get out of. Okay, so that means that you're in the state of every enchanted kingdom in a fairy tale, in need of the liberating force, or you're in need of Parsifal. You're the Grail castle, and nothing can occur. No history can occur. Time doesn't go on because there's not this force of, blessed is he who breaks past the gates. I mean, that's what is needed here, is this one who can, who will break through all false concepts, false opinions and concepts. So anyway, what do you think?
Yeah, that sounds really accurate to me. I mean, I think you've illuminated it for me.
Yeah.
And
well,
maybe
it's
maybe because I told this long before most of these people came on board. Maybe I'll just read the dream again.
Yeah, why don't you tell it one more time?
So this is called the labor camp.
Yeah.
I'm in a kind of labor camp where I've had several encounters similar to what's going on. Though I'm a prisoner and therefore subject to all the abuse that implies, as my group performs a kind of diversion along this curving snake-shaped sidewalk, I seem to be quite confident and in charge, even though another group makes fun of and harasses me. My nemesis is a guard and the leader of another group. He seems impressed or moved by this big open C chord that I play on the guitar that I'm using. And I use this to sort of taunt him. And he will often try to kick me, which I usually frustrate either by kicking back myself or by moving out of the way. And I think the next time he kicks, I'm going to try some simple judo, just waiting till the very last second, moving my leg slightly so that the kick connects with nothing, and watch him struggle with his balance.
This also reminds me of a dream. I mean, the fact that somebody's being made fun of, this was a dream I had too, where some prisoners were being held captive. I come along, they're all lying down in orange jumpsuits, singing just a song that I join in, and then we are made fun of by everybody standing outside. So I mean, it was it had that same aspect of that the representatives of the conscious attitude ridicule the nature path, the lyrical path of liberation and freedom, because it's not in sync with the dominant attitudes, so anyway.
Yeah, and it's always easier for the ego
Tim?
to make fun of the other, rather than like the logos. The eros would never make fun of something.
No,
Yes,
it wouldn't.
Tim,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I just had the feeling like when he kept telling about the dream, I don't know if that's not something to do with it, but the election in America just keeps popping up in my head. I don't know whether you're from America, and
Yes.
I don't know how much you pay attention to the election, and the two opposing camp is like two different. I don't know. It just these feelings of the election. You have the labor camp, the two different sides, and the prisoner is just another construct.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just mentioned for discussion's sake, I guess.
Well, that's helpful, Kevin, because that really is true in my conscious attitude. There is this frustration that that logic only works on one half of the equation, and the other half is all emotional and sort of beyond facts. And so that's a really interesting observation. I'll have to think about that, how it reflects socially.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we now? Someone like either Ivan or Kevin or Sandy or Gelsey or Usama, do you have a dream that you'd like to share? Anybody? Or Gary or Charles?
I got dreams.
Yeah, well, go ahead, Charles. But the other, feel free to jump in. I mean, the whole idea is we're just all learning. I always say the next week, all I'm doing is thinking about these dreams, going over and over and because it's this.
I guess before I go into a dream, I guess I would comment on Tim's dream, saying that it's so clearly depicting some sort of internal conflict and describing what, like, the part of you that is, the part of you that would be so irritated, what it's irritated at, and the part of you that's so confident, what it feels confident over. And it's almost like the inferior feeling is like in your shadow, or that it is more related to your shadow. And I just find it really interesting that it's just describing and depicting this dynamic of conflict and how the roles are reversed, and that the captive feels the confidence, and the one who wants to, at least desires to, kind of lord over things is left feeling more inferior and frustrated. I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's the king is held captive in his own kingdom.
Right.
I mean, that's very typical. Well, unless anyone else has a dream, why don't you give us one, Charles?
Okay,
Yeah,
this
thanks
one's
for that
really short.
observation. That's really helpful. Thanks.
Oh, of course. I thought this was a pretty interesting dream. I'm with a friend in a bedroom, and we hear knocking on the door and become alarmed. I'm in the bedroom, and I search under the bed for a weapon, but can only find a dull knife-like object. And excuse me, I was in a house at the beginning of the dream, and once the knocking happened, I go into the bedroom and go under the bed to find this dull knife-like object. The brother of my friend appears in the window. He was the one that was knocking. His eyes were covered by big, round, colorful objects, almost like pinwheels or whirligigs, or I don't know, like kind of spiral-like and colorful. And in real life, he's a paranoid schizophrenic, outside of the dream. And his friend comes into the room, and underneath the bed, there are Lego pieces, and he pulls them out. And there's a bunch of different characters, and he chooses a character, asks which one I would like to choose, and I pick the sailor. And that's where the dream ends.
Okay, well, this is you're in a house. So you're in a place, you're in there with a friend, and suddenly there is an intruder that wants entrance into the house, which causes alarm. Okay, so you go into the inner recesses of this place to get away from the intrusion and look for some method of defense. But this intruder knows exactly where you are, and its face appears in the window. Okay, and it is a very it seems to me like with the pinwheels around its eyes, it is this representative of the unconscious that can drive, what it's the counterclockwise direction. It's regression, So the fact that it has some aspect that is not conscious, the whirling eyes. This just shows it's under a spell, especially around its method of vision is not normal. And it is the one that's intruding, or is wanting to be the intruder to gain entrance into consciousness. So,
And Charles, you said your friend's brother is actually schizophrenic in the world.
Yes, correct. The person that appears in the window with their eyes covered, yeah, he's paranoid schizophrenic.
Yeah, and in the old times, he'd be called someone who is very close to. I mean, he would be someone who had no ego, and was a living. He's a living dream. A person who has schizophrenia is a person who's dreaming all the time. I was a guardian of my cousin had schizophrenia, and she was just dreaming all the time. I mean, she's dreaming while she's awake, okay, and has no control over it. So she's just this living presence of the uncontrolled unconscious, who's seeking entrance into the into your conscious attitude, into your conscious attitude. So I mean, this seems to be some kind of eruption into consciousness that is can be a regression, but it also could be considered in alchemy sort of like the prima materia, you know, this figure of uncontrolled um, uh, dream, which this dream that never goes away, is could also be considered something like the like the that which must be defeated before I begin the work. There's so this is it's and now his friend comes in and uh, and 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 finds some um, symbolic figures that are underneath the bed, and you choose a sailor. So now the sailor is the one who can navigate on the waters of the unconscious without drowning, you know. So it seems to be that, and it might be because, you have all these uncontrolled dreams erupting in, I mean, you have so many dreams that it just needs, there needs to be a controlling order in this eruption. This some of these things that come into the conscious attitude can be there needs to be some order to them. In other words, I think they come in an uncontrolled basis, and the only way to control them is to do what we're doing right now, to be conscious of them, and to try to find out what aspect. Now, so now the friend of the person who's very uncontrolled, who looks through the window. This happens to me all the time. There's this person looking through the window, but this one is kind of so now looking through the window, I am seeing this person with the whirligigs around their eyes. This is the this is what I think of the unconscious, and its friend comes in. Now its friend is almost performing a ritual. It pulls symbolic elements from underneath the bed, right? And it wants you to choose one. You choose the sailor, the navigating force on the unconscious. So I think that's what's needed is a boat. The one who was outside the window is the one without the boat, the one that's floundering in the waters, So you need a good boat. That was one guy had this dream that he caught a whale, and this was actually Jeffrey Raff. Okay, he catches a whale in a boat, and he knows that that he's about to be pulled under, and he looks off, and in the distance, there's this figure running across the top of the water with a pair of scissors. And then he gets over to Jeffrey Raff, who's holding the catching this whale, and snips the fishing line. Okay. And the idea there is, I've actually had this discussion with Stuart Green, this falling deeply into these images of vision and trance. Jung said this. He said, he had the same access to he had access to the same sources as Jesus, as Buddha, and as Mani, who's another figure that Jung really respected. He says, but he chose not to identify with them. And then there was this dream where his father and he are in a temple, and his father tells him to bow, and his father bows and puts his forehead on the stone slab, but Jung just stops an inch short. So in other words, Jung is saying, I'm holding on to my ego position here. I'm not, in other words, I'm Prometheus. I'm just a human being, and I'm going to hold my human position, and I'm going to assimilate the contents of the unconscious, but I'm going to do it as an equal. In other words, my ego is going to be equal to I'm having a dialogue with it. I'm not going to be sucked into it. I'm going to have a dialogue. What do you think, Charles? Now this is just something. The only reason I'm bringing this up is because this is something that's been happening to me as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to see what date. Yeah, this is about a month after I was having, I don't know, experiences where, yeah, I had to make sure that my ego didn't get like overwhelmed or like kind of overpowered. And it was really frightening, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it definitely resonates. And yeah, the idea of the being alarmed by this presence that turns out to be this individual that that was their exact problem. Their ego was inundated or overwhelmed by it. So yeah, I would say it's definitely it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean that would be what I would say is that whenever we're dealing with the images of the unconscious, the two big enemies are inflation. I mean, someone who sees these images tends to identify with them, and then they get blown up like a balloon.
Oh yeah, that exact thing happened to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you're inflated by them, then you don't have a boat. I mean, you need to be a sailor, not a someone who has whirligigs around their eyes and is floundering in the water. So this is what is what alchemy is saying. Is alchemy says this, is it says that you are the redeemer of the forces of the unconscious, but it's a partnership. The unconscious doesn't want to be worshipped. It doesn't want to be identified with. It wants to have a dialogue partner, and so the danger of contacting it is you don't have a boat. You need a boat, or what you've caught, like Jeffrey Rapp, is too big for your boat. And then the guy with the scissors has to run up and clip your line, But this is a wonderful dream. I mean, to me, it is very evocative of this very problem. Is that depending on how permeable you are, if you're very permeable, and for instance, my cousin Allison, if she's just always, she's gone now, she's passed, but she would, you know, it's just no ego. So no boat, you know, and that's the whirligig person too. So anyway, that one is in need of, you need to hold your place.
So Craig, are you
Lead
saying that
dialogue, but you need to hold your place. Go ahead.
you're saying that the boat is the ego's way of navigating the unconscious?
Of holding your place as a human ego, and not being floundering in the unconscious. You need to hold your place as a human being, and you don't overvalue your place, but you hold your place. And so then you can have a dialogue, you know. But if the ego is going to say that I'm, first the ego has to be open and receptive to the unconscious, and secondly, it has to hold its place. You know, I mean, what the usual nemesis in this thing is the ego totally undervalues the images and overvalues the conscious attitude. And the opposite situation is where the ego just is drowned by the images. So the middle ground is where you have a boat, where you're a sailor. You know, Jesus was a sailor when he walked upon the water, and you know, that was a song by Leonard Cohen. It was a beautiful song.
Huh.
You know, where anyway, I think that Charles, that's is could be a puer dream too. It seems to be a puer dream. Sandy, did you have any, or Kevin, or
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because we were talking about ships and boats, and I had like 2 days after our last or this group meeting, and I think it's somewhat. I don't know. I don't know the meaning to this dream, so that's why I'm sharing it. Is that there is a big arc and a huge arc, and there was like in each arc there was rooms, and so I was looking up and I see there's two people in each compartment, and I felt like it's something's, gonna come. So me and the girl close the door and we go into this ship, this big arc, and inside this big arc there was this almost gorilla, chart-like looking animals lying on the floor, or humans lying on the floor, and in their mouth there was like burning charcoal or burning wood, and we had to go past this to sort of get out of this place. And so we had a stick and we just beat them, and we moved to the next. We just beat them because when we beat them, the firewood, the charcoal would, how do you say this, would turn off.
Mhm.
And we managed to get to the other side. Um, and which is funny about this dream when I say the other side, because it wasn't vertical, it wasn't horizontal, it was just straight forward on this big arc. So I don't know the meaning of this. I tried to amplify these images on the floor, but I really have difficulty time doing it. And the charcoal, I tried to read about the fire symbolism and so on, but still I still don't feel that I am getting the dream.
Mhm. Well, the arc.
Should I say it again? Yeah.
Well, the arc is this saving ship when the flood. Are you talking about Noah's Ark?
It was just an arc. I didn't feel it. It was a big arc. Like it didn't have. Yeah, it was a big arc. Really big arc. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, just as any, I mean, you don't call something an arc unless it is.
Yeah.
It has
It wasn't a
something
boat.
to do with the. It has something to do with keeping out the flood.
Yeah, it
Keeping
was
out
like that. Yeah.
the unconscious flood You know, this is what all floods represent, is that everything has went underneath. This is kind of the night sea journey, you know, or the going into the belly of the whale. You know, everything has been taken over by the unconscious. The only way to keep it is just like in Tim's case, I mean, in Charles's case, is you need this vessel called the ark, which is this half of a sign of a kind of a lunar crescent, you know, and it is what keeps you from going under or being immersed and dissolved. Now, the fact it acts in this case almost like a bridge, okay, rather than, I mean, because you go through it, you know, so it's sort of a bridge. You're there with the anima. You and the anima are there, and what you find inside of the ark are primitive hominids, you know, some type of primitive aspect of ourselves, one that is very unconscious. So inside the protecting vehicle that protects us from the unconscious are beings who are barely conscious, and in their mouths are burning pieces of wood. Okay, so what they speak and eat with is clogged with some burning wooden material, which is very interesting. I mean, this is that is mysterious. So the primitive figures.
It makes me think of the something like in the beginning was the word, you know, this really
Yes,
powerful,
it has to do with
this,
what's blocking the
this
word.
powerful wisdom that is undigested and unspoken, that is in their mouths, that they don't have the maturity to
Keeps them primitive. This is what's keeping them in this primitive hominid state. Is
but it's also a fire that can be used, that can be released into something more creative or intelligible.
he
Maybe.
speaks with fire. They sometimes say speaks with
Yes,
fire.
because Jonah, when he was inside the well, he had to create fire.
Yes.
But in this one, I had to extinguish them in order to get to the other side. There were like obstacles for me to get onto the other side.
Yeah, it's this aspect of you first of all are going into the ark because it protects you from the flooding waters, but inside are also representatives of the unconscious that are also um, are impeding your way. So your way is, I think, is very much is navigating the unconscious somehow. But you know, it's not safe on the outside, and it's not safe on the inside. So you need to get through to the other side, and to the other side is to the other shore or the other. So there is a dangerous path that you need to go through to get to the other side. The other side is going to be the side where there is more order, less chaos, and not the danger of the unconscious. The fire, which I think both of you said, could also be it's the light of consciousness. I mean, this is what Prometheus stole from the gods. He stole fire, which was ego consciousness. These primitive beings don't have ego consciousness, except they're trying to ingest it. They're trying to ingest the light of consciousness, or the fire of consciousness, but they can't. So they're remaining primitive, you know. And so, I mean, why would we be sent this dream? You know, okay. I mean, if I was have had this dream, I mean, I would be thinking this, that that again, I think this is an aspect of maintaining or holding my place with yet um, having access to the world of the images, you know, and so there's danger in the unconscious. There's danger of uh, of ego being snuffed out, you know,
Mm.
and so we need to be able to navigate these waters consciously, and we need to do it and the first time you meet these things when they are in their chaotic and primordial state, they are dangerous, you know. I mean, you need to you know how they're left undangerous is through differentiation. You know, you have this chaotic primordial mass and you start to find little islands in it, you know, and start to so it isn't just this primordial soup, you know, that there's you can start to pick things out of it, and then it's not so dangerous, it's not so inundating, you know. It actually has entities in it that emerge, like this was the idea of the fish, you know, in this ocean. These beings are coming out that we can pull up, you know. That is Kevin, I don't know what the resolution to that is, but
One
it
thing,
is,
Yeah.
yeah.
one thing I noticed is that, you know, it almost seems to be saying like, okay, you know, so the task is to get to the other side of the room, but it's almost saying, well, it's, you know, it's like the way to get there is, you know, beat the problems with a stick. You know, this doesn't take a lot of finesse, and that, you know, you do get there. So it's almost like, you know, just saying it's not something to be finessed.
Mm.
Beat it with a
I
stick
think
and you'll
what's
get there.
mm, I think what surprises me is that it's a big arc rather than a boat, because you can say if it's a boat, it's sort of an ego vessel, but this big arc feels like, you know, a temenos, a feminine,
Yes, the feminine
a
is with you.
yes. And for me, it's like if the ocean is the collective unconscious, perhaps some sort of a danger coming up, or sort of a constellation of an archetype comes up, then if that's the ocean is the collective unconscious, is the is this arc as well, this, you can say, the whale, a symbol of another part of the collective unconscious, which is that's the thing where I get, so what is the arc in that sense?
Yeah, it's a big dream. It really is. It is. I think it's an initiatory dream. You know,
Mm,
it's a dream of initiation. You know, it's one of introduction to the this, and it's got a slight element of that the images right now seem threatening. You know,
mm,
so there's an aspect of that they seem threatening. Why would they be threatening? Because they threaten to overwhelm and annihilate ego. I mean,
mm,
this is the idea is if ego is can be killed or wiped
mm,
out by being uh, inundated by these images, you know,
mm.
and so it needs its boat again, and it needs the guy with the scissors to make sure it doesn't go under. Go ahead, Sandy.
I have a question. The primitive being, it was a primitive being. Is that correct, Kevin?
Yeah, I first thought it was a gorilla, and I was passing, as I was beating them up, it was, then they look more like yeah, you can say charcoals, and human charcoals, like they had been burned up, but they were still alive, so they couldn't die, but they were just lying there. I mean, they died when I beat them, but they were lying there, burned up with a burning charcoal in their mouth,
So they were
and
almost dead.
yeah, they couldn't do much than to lie down basically, but they were still alive, and it feels like it was their task to lie there, to be an obstacle for me, like
Oh,
when you yeah, I felt like they were there to be an obstacle for me to reach to the other side. Um, so by beating them up, I would sort of decrease the heat.
Mhm.
What was
So
on the other side? You know?
it was just when I did come to the other side, what I remember is it was just a wooden floor. Um, because on my way there it wasn't a wooden floor, so when I get to the other side you can say, yeah, the goal, it was just a wooden floor. It wasn't anything else. It wasn't a door. It was just a wooden floor. I saw the last thing, like um yes, wooden floor.
Yeah, well, it's something that's beyond the danger, you know,
Yes,
beyond
yeah, I
the,
felt safe when I get there. I was like, yeah, I felt like, okay, this, okay, we got it, like,
what do you
but
make of
I
this,
didn't.
Sandy? You always have some way
I
of
think
bringing it. I always listen closely.
I was just curious about this being with the charcoal in its mouth. And when he explained further that it was like heat, I wondered, and he beat it with a
Mm,
stick, right?
mm. Yes, a bit the creature sort, yeah, and so then it wouldn't, the heat wouldn't. I could then go past it, like walk over it. I had to walk over them.
How did you know it was an obstacle to get beyond?
It's just a feeling. Like when I was in the ark, I was looking up. Okay, I see there's two person there. I felt like there is two people on each sections, and so I felt something is coming, which is usual for an unconscious, something to being activated. So I go in, and I think the first thing I see was a big chandelier, a really big one. But then I was then on the floor, and I see this, um, yeah, this creature, and I knew that I had to go past them. Killing them it wasn't that difficult. I just needed to beat them with a stick. When I see me, it was me and the girl I'm with, and it was just few of them. And when I get to the other side, and I don't know, my conscious situation, I don't feel I have uh, I am in any danger of being, because I work so much with, I don't know, I've been through Jungian analysis for some time, and I'm really like spend a lot of time um, developing myself and try to analyze them just for practice reasons. So I haven't felt any danger of being swallowed up by
Flooded.
the unconscious or flooded. I felt somewhat safe in that ship when I closed the door. It was like a temenos. I felt like, like a womb, like in the mother's embrace, basically. Um, but for me, I'm trying to understand, like, what am I doing there? Like, I don't understand what am I doing in this place, because I felt like I have worked so much with myself. I'm somewhat up there. I am no longer in the belly, but I don't know if they put me back somehow, for some reason. And yeah, so I was like, what am I doing there? Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
It's
The
so,
most
Kevin,
pow-
what did you feel like when you were in there and you descended? What were your feelings? Do you remember?
Yeah,
Like,
the thing I was like, one thing I felt, I was brave. Like, who is stupid enough to be inside the ship and actually try to see what is inside is? I felt like people was just in their container, but I was stupid enough to actually go in and look at what is inside it. And now I had to go past it.
how did you feel? Were you scared? It sounded like you knew
No,
what
I
to do.
wasn't. Yeah,
Sounded like,
I wasn't too scared. Yeah, I wasn't too scared. Like, I felt like, yeah, I really didn't. I felt like, how should I go past this? And suddenly, I had a stick, and yeah, so I was afraid of the heat that would obviously burn me, but it wasn't like persecution where I had to run, and I had to. It was more of a just an obstacle I had to go through, and I had a ways to go through this obstacle.
and it sounded like you knew what to do.
Yeah, I mean, I had the stick, so it wasn't that. If it was a game, it was quite an easy game rather than a very hard game. If that makes sense.
Yeah, interesting.
they're
Very
just
interesting.
amazing images. I mean, one thing I would take from this dream more than anything else is just the image of the ark. That's an amazing image. I mean, regardless of what the dream means, if I encountered the ark, that is incredible. And then these immolated. Now, the reason I'm saying immolated, I mean these charred beings. That's another image that is just very compelling. Why? I don't know, but it's compelling. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
both the ark and the immolated beings are very compelling. This would be a very good dream. I mean, they're unforgettable. Just put it that way. What do they mean? I don't know, but they're unforgettable. So that aspect of that they are just so powerful, regardless of what they mean, is important to me. If I had that dream, I could not get those out of my head.
And it makes me think about just the wisdom of keeping the image itself in the forefront, because we can get too fixated on trying to reduce it to a kind of meaning. And it's always helpful to come back to the image itself. And I agree with Craig that this arc that's really an amazing kind of image to keep in mind.
That would be almost what you could take from the dream, more than anything else. Is just the
I agree.
The privilege of viewing this is I think the meaning of the dream. I mean, it's almost like they sometimes call it anticipatory dreams, where you behold something that you're not ready for, yet they want you to see it because it's such a powerful, compelling image. And I'd say both of those images, I can't really tell you what they mean, but they're very, very compelling.
But, Kevin, on the tail end of what you said about my dream, I would say that in this discussion about the boat being the navigator of the unconscious, an ark is really a boat that's bigger than a person. And it could be that you're participating in a kind of conscious or a navigation that is bigger than just your own personality, that is a community project or a species-wide project where you can help to unfold this vessel that can be a navigator on a huge scale.
It's the great vessel. It's the one of it is the collective vessel. This is the vessel of the collective unconscious that floats on top of the collective unconscious. I mean, this is one not meant for individuals. This is one meant for the ancestral past. I mean, the ones it houses are all of the animals and the remnant of that is going to survive the cleansing. Now, see, a flood is a cleansing, purifying thing. It's what it is. The purification rituals. A flood tends to be a purification ritual. So the ark is the thing that is protects us from being dissolved when there's this ritual cleansing of purification. But anyway, that's getting a little off. But it's just the fact that it's such a powerful image. Now, how about Sandy, Usama, Ivan, or Gary? Anyone want? You guys want? Go ahead, Sandy.
I had a dream where I was on a bus. I was in the back of the bus and I was cooking some steaks, 2 or 3 steaks. and one was almost done when all of a sudden I thought, I haven't found my seat on the bus yet. So I looked up and the bus was pretty full, and I saw what I thought were a couple of empty seats. And I walked down the aisle, and turns out that people's things were in the seats, so there were no empty seats. The bus was full. So I walked back to the back, and I did see behind where I was cooking steaks, there was just this teeny little place I could possibly crawl into. Barely. There was somebody else there, and I thought, oh, I don't think I want to do that. So I went back to my steaks, and there was a guy there with me, and he was either the chef or my boss or something. And he said, you left that steak and I had to take it off, and you're just as usual, you're doing that again. And I said, well, yes, I did used to do that, but I haven't done that in quite some time. For quite a while, I've been conscious and aware of, my cooking, and so then I just continued to cook the other two steaks and was still kind of worried about not having a seat on the bus. And then 3 or 4 big FBI light guys come on the bus, and I tell them that I just I didn't have a seat on the bus, but I would have to stand, and they didn't seem to care at all. So and then there was a little space in time, and I heard a voice that said, the gods will sometimes come down and take small things from you, but they will return more than you can imagine.
Wow.
And that was the dream.
I had a very similar dream to this, that there was, you walked into a place and all of the chairs were turned upside down so you couldn't sit in them. And there was a person with his back to me, and, I did an active imagination on it, and the active imagination, or the voices in there, said that this is how your world looks to us. You have no chair for us, and you turn your back to us. So we have no chair for you, and we turn our back to you because you won't give us a seat, and you turn your back to us. So we do the same to you. So, I mean, there's this reciprocal action in the bus, in the communal, the communal vessel. You are doing something alchemical in the back of this communal vehicle, the vehicle of community. It moves like a car would be the vehicle of the ego. The bus is the vehicle of a communal aspect. And in the back, whenever there's cooking or you're cooking something, you are tending the alchemical vessel of transformation. I mean, something is this is where transformation takes place. Yet on this communal vehicle, there's no seat for you or for me. There's no seat for me. So I feel left out. Like when I'm in a house and I'm living in the house, but it's not my house and I don't know who the owner is. So I really have no place there. So it is the idea in the communal vehicle where transformation takes place. There, I have no seat or no place in that realm yet, and there seems to be places, but they're inadequate. Yet the FBI agents, or the ones, let's say the gatekeepers don't seem to be concerned about it, about the fact that you don't yet have a place. you know, I mean, this is, reminds me, I mean, I used to have recurring dreams about this, that I'm in a house that doesn't belong to me, and I don't know who it belongs to. So, but I'm living there almost secretly without permission, you know. So I'm I'm sort of a stowaway in my own house. You know, I mean, this was always a great, just this recurring dream. I'm a stowaway in my own house. You know, I'm in here surreptitiously sneaking around, you know. But so anyway, I would say that dream to me is the things that are important that I see in it is I have no place. There's no place for me. Yet this is the vehicle of transformation. I'm doing the transformation, but as of yet, I have no place in this vehicle.
Mhm.
But
Maybe, I guess maybe what I'd throw in is like, so it's difficult to fit in, but if you look for a way to fit in, then you lose the alchemical, transformation. And one of the members of your, ego, of your psyche, are upset that you're not paying closer attention to the transformation and instead are looking for how to fit in.
that's great. That's
That's
great.
great. That's helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is very good.
I find
When you're,
the
go ahead.
no, sorry. I was just thinking of the voice. I felt that was quite important, like the voice in the end.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, that's
The- Let's repeat that. The gods will take small things, but how did it end?
But they will return more than you can imagine.
Yes, but they will return more than you can imagine. So this requires your attention to I mean, it's something like what Gary's saying is they require your attention, and if you don't give them their attention, if they can't take that small thing, if they can, they will take the small thing, but they will reward you more than you can imagine. So the object of tending the alchemical fire
Mhm.
and not just trying to find a place to fit in, as Gary says, is what is required of us, the small thing, but it'll be returned to us in many fold. That's a beautiful dream. It really is. It's I mean, I'm just feeling a little numinous goose pimples right now from it.
Yeah, I love that last sentence. Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Isn't the voice? Sorry.
I was going to say I thought an interesting detail that haven't said anything about quite yet was the when he returned from looking for a seat, there was like a small hole that you could maybe crawl into, that there was someone already in there. And I just thought that was really curious.
I didn't want to go in there though. That is curious.
It's an odd place. It's not a regular seat. So that's not really fitting in. It's sort of,
Like
something
uncomfortable.
else,
Yeah.
Well, beautiful. Either Gary or Ivan, do you want to have anything?
Nothing short.
Okay, nothing short. Well, next week, if you have a longer dream, you go first, okay?
Okay.
All right, and yeah, that's what. Anyway, like a very, very long dream. You can do a very, very long dream, but you have to break it up into little short segments, each of which are very important. So why don't we, next time, Ivan, if you want to bring your dream, we'll just concentrate on it, no matter how long it is.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay. How about you, Gary? You got any?
I've got one, but it might go on a bit too. So, we'll put it off.
Okay.
I was just
Well, why
having
don't-
fun with everyone else's dreams.
Yeah, well, let's start with both you guys next time. Now, Usama, can you unmute yourself or not? I'm going to unmute. Well, I can unmute you.
Yes, I just unmuted myself.
Okay. Yeah. Well, feel free to bring in any dream. We usually only go about 90 minutes, but why don't next week, if you're here, we'll start out with you, Usama, and Ivan and Gary. And if you have any dream, Usama, even if it's a really old one, just bring it in. Because the whole idea is, you see, we're just this is tough work. It's not easy, And what Marie-Louise von Franz said, her and Jung, after he had done her dream, he'd wipe his brow and they'd both be sweating. He'd say, "Whew, aren't you glad you got a Jung to amplify that dream for you?" But anyway, if you Usama and Ivan are here next time, and Gary, why don't we start out with you three, and bring some dream, any dream, and even I always, even if it's a dream that's real ordinary, you can often find a lot in it. But again, this whole thing is just practice. None of us here have the answers. Like in Kevin's dream, I think what is just most beautiful about it is it really doesn't have, it has a meaning. I know there's a meaning there because I feel it, but it's just the images alone are very compelling, and I love Tim and Sandy's dreams both. They're very good. And Charles, your dream was, you always have the best dreams, Charles. You better okay. Well, next time let's try to get a dream from everybody. Okay. And it's
Thanks,
just
everybody.
it's just every Friday at this time.
That was helpful.
Thank
you.
you so
Great.
much, everybody.
See you guys next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.